Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. And Tom, this is kind of a new thing. We're going to do a preview of sorts. Ohio State's upcoming opponent is Florida Atlantic on Saturday at noon on Fox with Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, Fox's A-team. We just got done talking with Ryan Day, a 10-minute lightning round session that would have made the 80s game shows jealous at how rapid fire these questions came, and we learned some good stuff. We'll start with what I know you want to talk about, because you thrust your fist in the air and you shouted, and everybody had to wait until you calmed down. Ryan Day was asked if his aggressiveness as a going for it on fourth down, offensive coordinators like to do that, but would his aggressiveness change as a head coach? And he said,
probably not, but it had to balance it with the, putting the team in a good spot to win and all that. So I'm assuming that means probably we'll go for it more on fourth down than Urban Meyer did, but probably still not as much as he should, just because the nature of all college football coaches is to be risk averse, and punting on 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 is generally not going to get you questioned, whereas going for it and not making it becomes the lead question at the post-game press conference.
His immediate answer was no. And I thought, you know what, we're going to see, Ohio State is going to go for it on 4th and 4 from their 40. This is going to be really interesting and fun to watch. And then he proceeded to give every reason why he won't be going for it on fourth down.
Unless it's too sunny, or it's gray, or it's windy, or it's snowing, or there's rain.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. He obviously has a background as a quarterback's coach. With the back pedal, he could have coached corners. You could see that with the back pedal he was doing there. It's one of those things where, in his heart as an offensive guy, he always wants to go for it because he always truly believes he can get it. He has the players. He truly believes in himself. He truly believes in their offense. I'm sure deep down in his heart, he wants to go for it. He has the angel on his shoulder saying, go for it, and then the devil on the other shoulder. The devil looks like Kirk Ferentz, and the devil is saying, punt it.
Field position. Win the field position battle. Let's stay with punting and the special teams. Day said that he's going to be they'll be mixing in some returners, both kickoff and punt return. But did say he wanted to get Garrett Wilson a couple of punt returns, and I'm all for that. Mm-hmm. We've talked about him plenty, but we haven't really talked about him so much in the punt return game. We've put him in practice reports that he's been doing that. We don't get to really see. There's no examples of us getting to watch them do anything special teams wise in the return game, because it's all simulated. And I don't know if you guys can hear these bugs, but they're pretty loud. But Garrett Wilson, any type of way we can see him, I'm for it. So I'm hoping, not necessarily no rooting interest, but I'm hoping Ohio State can force some punts on Saturday. If this defense is as good as Ryan Day thinks it is, maybe they can force some punts, and we'll get to see Garrett Wilson any way we can. He said he's the ball. He's got a good feel for everything. The depth perception, talking about fielding punts, and his ball skills we all know are good. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's been a long time since they've had a dynamic punt returner, Jalen Marshall, basically. Mm-hmm. And they loved him because he was an aggressive returner, but we all know
he was dynamic in both good and bad ways.
Exactly. But I would like to see. I appreciate what KJ Hill does, but averaging 5 yards a punt return, I'd rather see something different.
Well, there's a lot of guys who they have been kind of working at punt return that are guys who are people you would probably put on the top 5 or 8 list of guys who, boy, it would be great if they could find different ways to get them the ball. Guys like Demario McCall, guys like Jalen Gill, Garrett Wilson. I mean, those are all people who, if you put together a list of, hey, Urban Meyer used to do the 10, their 10 best playmakers. Those are all guys who are on that list. But they also play positions where there are also some pretty good players ahead of them or with them on that depth chart on offense. KJ Hill, who is probably on the verge of breaking the Ohio State career receptions record, is ahead of Jalen Gill. You have J.K. Dobbins, who's, pretty good, and who everyone is talking up like he's about to have a Heisman Trophy kind of season. He's ahead of Demario McCall, and you've got Ben Victor at the X ahead of Garrett Wilson. I mean, there are reasons that these guys are not probably getting as many snaps on offense as you'd like to see them get, but if they can, get them a touch or two on special teams, especially, that you have the opportunity to get a touch on special teams that kind of puts you in the open field, which is where you want to see those guys. Give them a couple steps worth of space, and then see what they can make happen.
Did you catch Ryan Day calling Demario McCall a third down back?
I did not. I did not hear that.
Yeah, so when he was asked about Demario, he said, yeah, he'll play and he'll do this and that. And then at the end, he's like, he's a good third down back. And I thought that's the first time, that's what everybody kind of sees him as, but that's the first time that those words have been attached to him by an Ohio State coach that I can remember.
Yeah.
And it tells me that they've got a role for him and he has found his niche. And we all know they'll use him in the passing game just as they did against Michigan last year, as we've said 1,000 times. So it's good to see that he's getting to that point where they want him to be, and no illusions that he's this, we got to pound him up the middle type of guy that seemingly he kind of had to be as a freshman in 2016 when he was a backup in a bunch of blowouts, and they didn't want to. It wasn't fair to unleash him to his full potential against overmatched defenses. Zach Harrison was another name as we go through all of this and fire through all of these things that Ryan Day had to say, who will play. Harry Miller will play as far as the freshmen. The linebackers caught my ear when he mentioned that Craig Young running down on kickoffs. And we know Kate Stover was a guy we talked about in the past as doing that, but Craig Young, 6'4", probably about 215 pounds by now, 10.7, 100 meters, running down on kickoffs. You feel like you get to see a guy like that run. Even if somebody fair catches it, he should still be allowed to hit somebody.
Yeah, he is someone who is built solidly enough already and is fast enough that you get that mass times acceleration thing going. Like he's going to blow someone up at some point. And with the fair catches on kickoffs, you don't get that many chances to make a play on kickoff. And Ohio State's kick coverage is generally good enough that you don't see teams try and take advantage of it, try and run the ball out against them. So you're probably not going to see a ton of tackles out of him this year, but you may see, do you remember the Taraja Mitchell hit against, was it Penn State last year? There was he just went down, and I don't think it was even a tackle. I think he just blew up one of the lead blockers.
Yeah, it wasn't.
But it was like a highlight without actually recording a stat. Like, yeah, you would put Craig Young maybe on the list of guys who might do that this year. Well,
and that's what Justin Hilliard told us last year when this rule was put in place. He kind of laughed and said, "Well, there's still all kinds of hitting. It's just one less person being hit. Kickoff return is still very violent, and yet." And it's funny that's the hit that Taraja Mitchell is known for. He didn't have any tackles last year, but he's built up this expectation because of somebody he hit on kickoffs that didn't even have the ball. And I guess that's the fun part to watch on kickoffs now, since nobody actually returns the ball anymore. But maybe Ohio State will on their one return that they have per game because of the shutouts that they always have.
There could, yeah. Have you just woken up from a coma that lasted the entire 2018 season? Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good
What's
to have
new?
you here. One person that you haven't mentioned that Ryan Day talked about as a true freshman who was going to potentially play on Saturday was Jamison Williams, who, he's kind of lumped in with Garrett Wilson, and Garrett Wilson is, he's another guy who, boy, I would love to see him put him on that kick return / punt return list. I would love to see him get a chance to have the ball in the open field and see what he can do with it. He's not on that list yet. That may be a year away or something like that, but he is, if they can get him on the field, and it sounds like he's going to play, and, is that special teams, is that offense? We don't know. Ryan Day just listed him among the guys who would potentially play on Saturday. If you see him on offense, he's someone to watch in the open field, because he's, from the limited amount we've seen, he's someone who seems like he can turn nothing into something and something into a whole lot of something. He's someone also whose name has come up this month as a guy who was making some plays, blocking some punts on special teams. So you may see him there, and if you see him there, that's another place where you could see him making some pretty significant plays.
I think we will see him Saturday late in the game with a backup quarterback in. I don't expect them to throw deep to him because I don't know that the arms are there, and it's not. You don't want to throw deep when you have the backup quarterback in.
Right, yeah.
I could see him getting some screens thrown his way, and let's see what he can do. Get some of your tight ends out there blocking and see what he can do. Because if you look at his high school film, as we've said 1,000 times, he's pretty good at that. And why not see what he can do right away in as controlled an environment as they will have this year. So we'll see if that happens. Day also said he can't wait. The two things he was looking forward to, one was watching JK run and getting that pad level down and just watching him play, and then also his secondary. And we said in the last show that he is really excited about this defense, and he singled out the secondary today because he said it's hard to throw against them. The Ohio State offense has had trouble with them, which probably means your quarterback is terrible. But he's excited. He's mentioned Shaun Wade as one of the 3 cornerbacks on the team with first-round potential. And it's interesting to me that this defense has been termed, has 3 corners. And we'll see the depth chart, what it actually looks like tomorrow in terms of how they list it. Do they list it with 3 corners and 1 safety? Is it going to be 12 or 13 defensive guys listed as starters? Is the second starting safety actually not a starting safety? So we'll learn more. Maybe. Josh Proctor was mentioned as Jordan Fuller's backup, but he will play. I think he's going to be that nickel safety that comes in when they go too deep, which should be fun to watch.
Yeah, and I don't have extremely high hopes for the depth chart being the Rosetta Stone to understanding the Ohio State 2019 team. That seems like you're going to have a lot of player number 1 or player number 2 or player number 3, which is like, yeah, well, we know they're all on the team. The question is who's first, and a lot of times, especially early in the year, they don't want to definitively say first team, second team, third team. So you're going to have a lot of fill in the blank or number 2. They have said Brandon Bowen's going to start. Will it be Brandon Bowen or Nicholas Petit-Frere, or will it legitimately be Brandon Bowen as a first team, Nicholas Petit-Frere on the second team? We'll find out. We'll all find out together on Friday.
And it may not mean anything.
Florida Atlantic released their depth chart this week for this game, and it was their 2018 depth chart, which included players who have graduated, moved on, transferred.
So, Tom, that's a smart move, because if Ohio State wastes any time scouting those guys, that's a win for Florida Atlantic. If they're out there scouting, we got to prepare for Devin Singletary, who scored 32 touchdowns at running back in 2017 and is a dynamic guy. They have wasted a whole lot of time because that guy's in the NFL right now. I think it's pretty brilliant. In fact, I would use a 2014 depth chart.
That sounds really good. Why does this say that who was the head coach at Florida Atlantic 2014
Nobody actually. Carl Pelini.
Carl Pelini. I think it was Carl Pelini. It was,
2 people actually knew.
If it wasn't Carl Pelini, it was right before or after that. So
yeah, it wasn't long.
The Carl Pelini era at Florida Atlantic it wasn't long, but also it wasn't very good. So
but it was exciting.
Maybe get the Buckeyes overconfident if they're looking at a Carl Pelini coach team.
So we're talking about Florida Atlantic. Tom, what do we need to know about Florida Atlantic? We know they have a tight end.
Yes, their tight end, who is one of the better. This is going to be a good test for Ohio State's defense early, especially the bullet position. His name's Harrison Bryant. He's a senior this year. Last year, 45 catches, 662 yards, 4 touchdowns. How many years back do you have to go to find Ohio State tight ends totaling 662 yards? At least 2 seasons, maybe 3. That's a decent number of yards. And he had 32 catches, 408 yards, 5 touchdowns the year before that. He's a 6'5", 240-pound guy, so he is a big target. He seems very much like almost a prototype of the type of player that when Brendan White was talking about, when the bullet's going to be on the field, it's when the opposing team has a big pass-catching tight end on the field. That's when you're going to see the bullet. I think that means you're probably going to see a good amount of Brendan White instead of Pete Werner or some of the other Sams.
As you're talking about him, I'm thinking of what Iowa was able to do in 2017 with their tight ends and just abusing Ohio State's linebackers. So we'll see if this has maybe been a fix for that, and not the fix, but an option for them to go. And yeah, Brendan White will have should be a busy day. Florida Atlantic will run up tempo, so they may try to stick when Ohio State has a linebacker on the field, instead of, like with Pete Werner is in instead of Brendan White, they'll go up tempo and maybe try to keep him in there and take advantage of that situation. But as Day said, or somebody said, maybe on the radio show today, that Pete Werner is capable of handling that, and their linebackers are good enough to where there isn't a huge separation in terms of missing out on a guy who could defend the tight end between Werner and a safety. Sorry for that distraction. Mm-hmm. Anything else from now we know Chris Robeson is the quarterback. Was the starter last year. Threw for around 2,500 yards, 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, rushed for maybe 180 or something like that. Does a little bit of that. It's not really his thing. So they will maybe play a second quarterback because
they haven't officially announced the starter yet. So,
right. So, and Lane Kiffin has said 2 guys will possibly play, but everybody expects the last year's starter to be in there. I don't think he poses much of an issue. They're breaking in a couple of new running backs. The receivers are, they're Tom, when the guy that people talk about is the tight end, that means 2 things. It means he's probably a pretty good tight end. It also means there's nobody else to talk about. Yeah,
that means you're outside of the tight end, you don't have a ton of returning skill position talent, and that's the case for them. And Robeson, this is his second year. He was a freshman last year, so yes, he's going to be better than the 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions that he had last year. But you can be better than that, and if you don't have that running back you can kind of lean on, that can make you a much less effective in the passing game. If you don't, and it remains to be seen. This is new running backs coming in. We don't quite know. I mean, that was something that the coaching staff has talked about. Like, they don't quite know what to expect because a lot of these guys are kind of new, and new players are great because you don't really know. These are generally guys who are going to be kind of learning on the fly, and so from that perspective, sure, that's encouraging for Ohio State, but it also means they don't have a lot of film. They don't know have a lot of expectation for what they're really going to see. So I would certainly expect that you'll see a play or two. That tight end's going to get open for a 25-yarder down the seam or something, and everyone's going to freak out. It's going to happen. Unless if they're running the ball consistently on Ohio State, that's something to be concerned about. If they hit a play or two here or there, it's going to happen. Like, these guys also have scholarships. Right. These guys also are pretty good football players.
And a lot of them had scholarships from like Alabama and Florida and transferred to Florida Atlantic.
Yeah, that is something that's worth noting. There are a lot of guys on this team that started somewhere else, and Lane Kiffin has kind of turned that into your second home. This is your place up north, except this is your place down south. It's your Florida Atlantic is kind of your beach house.
I would call it a halfway house.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that as well. But yeah, there's a lot of kind of individual talent on this team.
Right.
That this is not the Power 5 program that's coming in with a bunch of 2 and 3 stars. There are some 4-star recruits on this team that this is not their first stop, but that talent is still in there somewhere. And Lane Kiffin, I don't think I'm speaking too far out of turn here to say that Lane Kiffin is probably not planning on making a career of coaching at Florida Atlantic, so he's probably looking for somewhere else to be. And one of the ways he's doing it is bringing in those talented guys where, even though it's not a 4-year kind of program building recruit, the goal is get to 9-10 wins and get that next job lined up. And so you've got talent there, but they don't have that across the deck. They don't have the depth that Ohio State has. So there will be moments for them, but I would not expect any kind of sustained success.
Yeah, he's got like a get-rich-quick schemes. I think you're about to get a parking ticket here, Tom.
Well, I have a media parking pass on my... you thought you were going to get a parking ticket.
Checked out my car.
Yes. Campus Park is by West. It's,
I had too many car air fresheners blocking the parking pass, and I had to get out and take a look.
This was the on-campus version of Shamrock Towing, Campus Park, who everyone loves.
And he's not moving, so I don't know if he's writing me a ticket or if he is, because it's not viewable.
Well,
he's moving. All right, keep it going.
Crisis averted. Back to football.
Jeez, that would have been good for the show, but we don't have much more time. You're talking about scouting. Scouting for Florida Atlantic's defense, I think we talked about this on the last show, is going to be difficult because they have a new defensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I guess he was a guy that was at Charlotte last year, but had worked with Mike Yursich before. Mm-hmm. But Ryan Day said, it's so much different than what he was known for when he was working with Yursich, that really you just have to try to get as many different views in terms of Charlotte, the players, what they do, and that's why these first games are always kind of a crapshoot. You can prepare and think you know what to expect, and then something else. They show you something else, and it's like, well, what the heck were we doing? Mm-hmm. And don't put too much stock into if things go a little wonky, because they should.
Right. You're not going to... Ohio State is favored by basically 4 touchdowns. I think it's 27 or 27 and a half last time I looked. They are going to score more than 28 points. They are probably going to give up some points. This is probably not going to be a 72-0 game like Pitt was in '96, or the Florida A&M game. This is a competent team that they're playing with a coach who has some experience, a coach who has a reputation for kind of being creative and coming up with some different ways to move the ball around, and they have some pieces on offense. This is not an absolute body bag game like they have played it sometimes in the past. So we haven't done any kind of official predictions, but they're probably going to get, I would say Florida Atlantic gets certainly into double digits in terms of points, and figure a 45-17 type of game, probably something in that neighborhood, plus or minus a touchdown for Ohio State.
All right, sounds good. I think yesterday I said on a YouTube show 49-10, but I was going to go 42-10, but somebody else went with that instead, so I had to jump up a touchdown. But I'm not sure if that's my final yet. We'll see. We'll have those game picks for you Friday morning. Tom, anything else? We got to get going.
I guess we need to get going. So I guess we'll see you all on Saturday at the Horseshoe.
We will see you all at Saturday at the Horseshoe. I'm working on my prepositions. I'm not very good at them. On them. All right. Thank you all for listening. We will see you guys Saturday.